They are places of peace, of renewal. But houses of worship have also recently become targets for violent attacks.
And we have seen it here in Colorado, a mass shooting in a church, and most recently, a gunman targeted people at a Pittsburgh synagogue. Well,
tonight, Denver 7's Jennifer Kovaleski is going 360 on whether armed guards belong in places of worship.
For many, this issue is black and white. You're either for or against guns. But when you're talking about guns in church, there's also a lot of gray. So let's bring this issue into focus and go 360, starting with two churches who see this as black and white.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
All right, for this relatively new church in Northwest Denver.
1, 2, 3, Jesus! We've seen the stories on the news.
Today's reality of gun violence in places of worship.
Good to see you.
It's just the time that we live in.
Is all they've ever known as a church.
It would be foolish for us to just assume that nothing bad can happen.
Which is why lead pastors Jody and Mandy Early have embraced armed security.
We kind of have to.
For them, it's simply about being prepared.
I wish guns didn't belong in the church. The gun in and of itself is not the issue. It's whoever is controlling that.
But while there is a gun here,
LCP 380.
You won't see it inside.
It's just a nice concealed carry.
They choose to keep it hidden during Sunday worship.
Our approach is to hope for the best but plan for the worst.
Their plan is having someone who knows how to handle a gun, in their case, an off-duty patrol officer.
We can stop something before it starts.
More guns is not the solution to anything.
Reverend Mike Marin at the First Unitarian Society of Denver sees this issue through a completely different lens.
There are people out in the community who are armed and dangerous and may decide to take out their rage upon us.
A congregation known for taking very public stands on controversial issues like immigration justice. They've had threats before, but you won't find any armed security guards here.
We just felt philosophically we did not want guns walking around our property, no matter who was carrying them.
Why?
They're dangerous. They hurt people.
Marion believes violence begets violence and disagrees with the argument. You need a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with one.
Bad guys with guns do what they're going to do, and people get hurt. It's just a false argument.
Instead, this congregation takes security seriously with a written emergency action plan.
On Christmas Eve, one of the first things I said from the pulpit was, just take a moment and notice where the exits are.
Which brings us to Colorado Springs and the scene of the last church shooting in Colorado. For two perspectives, from two people who've seen firsthand how guns save lives.
I was in charge.
Jeff Cowell was in charge of security at New Life Church when evil came to their front door on December 9th, 2007.
He set off a smoke bomb at the north end of the church, creating a diversion, went around the south entrance, set off another smoke bomb, and then drove to the east end, got out, and started shooting in the parking lot.
The shooter killed two people before a member of his volunteer security team ran toward the bullets.
We made it about 75 feet inside the building, and we stopped him.
I said, drop your weapon or I'll kill you.
Gina Som was that security guard, a veteran police officer armed with a handgun. The shooter had an assault rifle.
He could have killed me. I mean, he shot at me. We were shooting at each other.
And the only way to get to him is to shoot back and run at him.
Had she not had a gun, they both believe many more people would have died that day.
If he had gotten up into the buildings, he would have, the death toll would have been horrendous.
Cowell now helps churches across the country develop their own security plans, some with guns, others without. Which brings us into that gray area.
I think there's a need for it. Everyone doesn't have to have a gun.
Well, he sees a need for guns in church. He believes above all else, every congregation needs to have a security plan and thinks the best teams are not hired, but a part of the ministry.
It's a part of the church. It's linked in with the goals of the church and the values of the church.
Not only are we seeing more mass murders, the counts are going up.
Carl Chin has also dedicated his life to keeping places of worship safe. He shares some of Cowell's views, but he's less concerned about guns and more concerned about churches being intentional, armed with guns or armed with a plan. He says they must do something to keep their people safe.
Many churches still ignore the dangers at their church, and they say it probably won't happen here.
Carl thinks it's time for all places of worship to wake up. And from his perspective, it's all too political.
Churches, unfortunately, have fallen into the same trap that most Americans have. The only discussion they can have is a political one. and it's not political. It's about the safety and security of the people.
So while the debate over guns is just as polarizing in church
and praising God
as it is anywhere else these days,
other institutions across the country have mastered the ability to be welcoming while at the same time having security.
The need for a plan or some kind of security is something more and more churches are starting to agree on. Jennifer Kowaleski, Denver 7.
Well, the Archdiocese of Denver tells us they encourage parishes to work with local law enforcement to develop security plans. Love to hear your thoughts on armed security in places of worship. Please email us 360@thedenverchannel.com's the address, or join the conversation on the Denver 7 Facebook and Twitter pages.